Hello YouTube, back to the next My Little Pony review, and today I'm reviewing Squirk and Crank. These two are sort of a little team. We don't see them until the second half of the Ghost of Paradise Estate storyline. I mean, there's 4 parts. We only see them in the first half and the second half, because the first half is taken up by the Ghost of Paradise Estate, which turns out to be Pluma, a shapeshifter sort of a deal. Ends up being a sort of a peacock type of animal when you actually get down to it. But she ends up doing the bidding of Squirk's bidding, really. But regarding these two, given the fact that they're never apart, it's hard to say how they would have dealt with each other. Squirk probably would have been fine, given he's an evil tyrant and just wants... he'd probably much rather be without Crank in general, because we find out he's constantly annoyed by Crank's constant laughter and seemingly never really taking the things seriously. He's always... Crank is always finding something funny to laugh about, which always seems to tick Squirk off constantly. Although, especially considering that Crank, when finds out that he hasn't done what he's supposed to do, you know, I should probably bring up the fact that Squirk is basically a giant red lobster thing, and Crank is, of course, a purple. I don't know. Squirk is a red octopus. Sorry, red octopus for Squirk, and Crank is the purple lobster. It's got a white mustache. They both have yellow eyes, as far as we can tell, but they're never apart. That's kind of why I'm reviewing them together, because they sort of play a part as villains, but Crank is more the sidekick, doing all the work for Squirk in general, or at least helping out to an extent. He does help get the half of the amulet, the Flash Stone, which was separated because it was too dangerous after the first time Squirk actually had control. Squirk actually owned the land before Paradise Estate, as it would turn out. So it's, you know, when you look at Squirk, of course, he's what you'd expect a villain to be. He's constantly giving orders. He's probably not as good as... He's not as good as Grogar, for example, but it has a similar feel to it, because he's constantly, when he's frustrated, he'll take it out on someone else. Usually the person that's doing the dirty work, and in this case it would turn out to be Crank. But Crank is at least somewhat competent. He's probably not entirely competent, because he's constantly messing things up. The ponies may be partly responsible for that, because I mean, at one point during the struggle, I think Buttons ends up interfering with getting the second half of the amulet, but it doesn't matter anyway, at least not right away, considering the fact that Squirk ends up getting both halves and starts flooding the land, but ends up losing overall. But it's not easy, because even after... he makes it really difficult for them to get out, because he ends up getting them trapped in a sort of... if I'm remembering this right, he gets them trapped in sort of a T-Rex head style thing that will actually get worse as it goes. So it starts, you know, it's only under so much holding it open, but I think they end up like a shell or something like that, and end up holding it up only for so long. But they do eventually get out and get things back in order. And I don't remember exactly what happens to the path. I'm sure they're probably further separated so they can never be found again. Squirk, I think they end up retreating or something. That's typically what happens with villains like this. Crank may never be seen again. They're never seen again. We never see either one of them after this point. So we have no idea how they're reacting, whether they're still together. They may be still dealing with their defeat here. But regardless, by the of course, by the end of the episode, Pluma turns out as a grandfather who was basically held captive previously and is just freed at the end of the ordeal. But I don't know. If you like this sort of, leader and comical sidekick sort of deal, you probably would enjoy at least these two. At least for the second half. It's, parts 3 and 4 are featuring these two. And it's interesting to see what, My Little Pony does for other creatures, because even today we don't really have a whole lot of, other creatures until, G3 never had any, except a dragon. Spike was the only one in that, and the movie does have some. Try not to spoil a whole lot for those of you who haven't actually seen the movie, with all the trailer and all that, but yes, there are some different creatures in there. I won't bring up too much for that, so... I don't know how well they're going to fare in terms of versus these. I'm not convinced they're going to be all that great, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see in a couple weeks. that's all about. But yeah, that's my view on Squirk and Crank from the G1 TV series. Thanks for watching.